Headmaster Kennedy, thank you for showing with that generous introduction why I so love Lumiere. It's one of the few places where they have a motive for overstating my accomplishments. Mr. and Mrs. Kennedy, over the last 8 years, with the leadership of Brian Smith and a phenomenal faculty, you have created a rising demand for Lumiere education, built a stellar student body, now more than twice the size it was when you came, and preserved the signature feature of Lumiere at its founding, a family-like community where everyone knows everyone. Michael and Colleen, in these tough economic times, it is so heartening to come home to a place that is thriving. Thank you both. Father Watts, Zach, phenomenal job speaking with that tassel dangling off your cheek. Mr. Kaminsky and members of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Smith, Mr. Kuntz, Mr. Ballawender, Mrs. Weigel, leaving Lumiere after 27 years, and all the Lumiere faculty, Lumiere staff, parents, families, third, fourth, and fifth formers, and especially Lumiere graduating class of 2012. When you students see a Lumiere alum, I wonder whether you feel the same bond that I do when I see you. You and I have studied in the same classrooms, played on the same fields, walked in the same woods. When someone told us to go jump in the lake, it was the same lake. We all grew up here. We're family. Alana Murray has the same first name as my mother, and Matthew Kleige was named after my brother, so I really do feel like I'm with family. I was taken into this family the first month of my junior year, and in week 1, I dressed for my first Lumiere soccer game. In the team huddle before the game, our coach Jim Copens gave us a short talk and then said, "Lumiere?" And all the players said, "Number 1." That was new to me. I didn't join in. It would have seemed way too eager. And besides, I didn't really know if these guys were number 1 or not. I needed more data. They won that game and won a few more and kept chanting before and after every game, "Lumiere, number 1." Then we played our top rival, Argus, for the chance to make it to the state semifinals. The whole school got on buses and vans and went to the game. We won 3-1. And Lumiere, number 1, was getting pretty close. Downstate, we won our semifinal match against Heritage Christian, 2-0, and Lumiere, number 1, was on the brink of reality. The next day in the final, we played New Albany for the Indiana State High School Soccer Championship. New Albany got off to a fast start, and they had a fast finish, too. We lost 5-0. It was a subdued locker room after the game. Everybody moved in slow motion, showered, dressed, packed their gear, started to go, but before he let us leave, Coach Copens gathered us in to close the season. He praised our play, he thanked the team, he led a prayer, he paused for a second and said, "Lumiere?" And all those dejected players said, "Number 1." I thought to myself, were you guys at that game? Did you see the scoreboard? We got crushed. Well, I didn't get crushed. By the time I got onto the field with 5 minutes left to play, things were too far gone for me to turn it around. You see, I didn't really get Lumiere. I came in October as an emergency refugee from a giant high school in suburban Chicago where I was outstanding. Outstanding in the hallway because I had been kicked out of class. The last misconduct report I got from that school had a lot of boxes checked. Is a disturbing influence in class? Check. Comes to class unprepared? Check. Puts forth minimum effort? Check. Is failing? Checkmate. The teacher wrote, Tom has been late. Often has been truant twice. He spends the entire class period joking with friends. We have discussed the situation, tried independent study, and spoken with the dean. This is the last resort. Actually, that was not the last resort. The last resort was this lakeside resort right here. Lumiere was a big change for me. Going to class, being on time, doing homework, I actually started to get decent grades. But when my first report card came, Headmaster Moore wrote at the bottom, Tom should know I knew of his talent when he came here. The only thing left is to know what kind of person he is. Mr. Copens, my Spanish teacher, wrote, if I have any criticism of Tom, which he did, it would be that even though he tests well and prepares his assignments well, he is a little reluctant to laugh with people and more prone to laugh at them. Ha! I'm finally getting good grades. What more do you want, Lumiere? A lot more, it turned out. Over the next few months, I really started to like it here, and at the close of the semester, I got another comment from Mr. Copens. Tom is a gifted student. And you know, they just say that to set you up. But I would like to see him recognize that with intelligence comes the responsibility to contribute to the good of the community. I think he has made a beginning. By the start of my senior year, this was my home. And at the end of the semester, Mr. Copens weighed in on this subject for the last time. Tom's participation is much improved this year, and I've been especially pleased to see him become more integrated into the senior class. From laughing at others to integrated into the class in less than 3 semesters, and somewhere along the way, I learned that Lumiere, number 1, was not about a soccer game. And my teachers and coaches and Headmaster Moore wanted more than good grades. They wanted good character. Character is at the core of everything distinctive about Lumiere. You know this every bit as well as I do. We don't have classes in character at Lumiere. We absorb it from the teachers, the way they talk to us, the stories they tell, the lessons they teach, the way they look at us, and of course the comments they write in our report cards. We learn character also from our classmates. I have classmates that I owe a special debt to. Among them, Mark Lydon and Dave Collins, who are here, and Jim Lennon, who is not. My memory of Jimmy is of a guy who just kept getting happier. They were all students at Lumiere before I was, and they taught me from the first day how things are done here. I still look up to them. These are the kinds of guys my parents wanted me going to school with from the beginning. I want to tell the Lumiere parents here today that my mom and dad always thought that sending me and my brothers to Lumiere was among the very best decisions they ever made. I called my dad last week to check my memory, and he said, oh yeah, it's in my top 5, definitely, up there with marrying your mother. Here at Lumiere, I learned that a big part of character means you treat others with respect, even if you don't agree with them. Character means you don't separate yourself from those you think are different from you, or become intolerant of them, or laugh at them. I learned here that you can't have community without character. Unfortunately, much of the world is not doing very well in these measures of character, and we're facing special challenges of community in America right now. A few years ago, a former colleague of mine named Bill Bishop wrote a book called The Big Sort. President Clinton thinks this is one of the most important recent books on America. But it applies also in China, South Korea, Colombia, Canada, Croatia, Honduras, Sudan, Iran, in every country that is represented in your class. Bishop points out that beginning in the 1960s, people in the United States have started sorting themselves into different communities. We're choosing neighborhoods, churches, civic groups, workplaces, according to whether people think the same way we do on matters of politics. And when we separate ourselves into groups of people who think the way we do, we start demonizing people on the other side. When this happens, the sense of community starts to break down, and the country's institutions run into trouble. It's already begun, and it's getting worse. In May of 2000, I was in the Oval Office with President Clinton and a group of his advisors, discussing legislation in Congress on our South American ally, Colombia. Hunter was 7 years old at the time and could dunk. The president said, if this bill passes, I want to go to Colombia. The top White House advisor for Latin America stepped forward and said, Mr. President, if you go to Colombia, you should make a side trip to the Amazon. President Clinton thought for a moment and said, I'd love to go to the Amazon. I've never seen piranhas in their natural habitat. President Clinton and Speaker Gingrich had brutal political fights, but even in those partisan days, the president and the speaker partnered on a balanced budget agreement that included all kinds of concessions that were hard for both sides. It's hard to imagine we could see that kind of teamwork for America in Washington today. A few years ago, Mickey Edwards, a former Republican congressman from Oklahoma, went back to Congress and he stopped in to see the barber who'd been cutting the hair of congressmen there for years. And the barber told him, Congressman, it's so different now. It's so different. People don't like each other now. They don't talk to each other. If the factions that divided America were to take hold here at La Lumiere, the headmaster, Mr. Smith, Mr. Kuntz, the faculty, Zach, Devin, John, Joy, all the student leaders would come together and do everything possible to stop that. Those factions are the opposite of what you've learned here. They're the antithesis of what makes this place so special. So when you leave for the wider world, take with you what you learned here. The best way to change society is to refuse to let society change you. Never become a member of a group that defines itself by its distaste for someone else. You wouldn't do it here, you shouldn't do it there. If you get involved in politics as I did, great. Fight hard for what you believe in. Just try to stay cool. And don't forget, no matter how much you dislike someone's point of view, it's his country too. This isn't new for you, it's living the values you learned here, values you and I share. In a few minutes, we will share one thing more. We will never be students here again. And that still makes me sad, 35 years after I sat where you're sitting. Some of the best days of my life were lived here, and I've spent a long time wondering why that was. And now I think I know. It's because here at La Lumiere, my teachers, coaches, and classmates knew me well and liked me anyway. And I liked them back. It wasn't just one or two friends. It was a network of deep friendships built on affection and respect. That is what it means to have community. It's the single greatest source of human happiness. And once you taste it, you don't ever forget it. At Lumiere, it also became clear to me that in a community, not everyone is equal. There is often someone who stands out, who serves as a central figure and helps everyone else bond together with a sense of belonging, a sense of common purpose. Last year, I had dinner in Washington with Mr. Kirkby. Mr. Kirkby was the first teacher ever hired at Lumiere, the favorite teacher and coach of hundreds of students, and my advisor then and still. He had spent the day at the Supreme Court as the guest of the Chief Justice, then he joined me. It's a steep drop from his best student to the rest, but he loves us all. I really don't have much to say about Mr. Kirkby as a teacher, except this. When I was in his class, I gave him every ounce of my effort every single day all year long. He had that effect on me. So during our dinner, sitting inside his force field, inspired by that legendary energy, I wanted to be in his class again, in his dorm again, at Lumiere again. I wanted to ask him, Coach, have you checked the calendar? Have you studied the schedule, Coach? Are you sure we don't have one more class, one more game, one more test where you try your best to stump us and then root like mad for us not to get stumped? No? No more classes, no more games, not for me and not for you. I could try to soften that for you. I could offer you the old sad bromide that you're going on to bigger and better things. But in the joys and values that make life worth living, it's hard to get bigger or better than this. Your job is to keep it going. Keep building community wherever you go. Stay close to the people you're sitting next to. And take these lessons of character with you to the rest of your life. Do that, and you will do very well. You will have a fantastic life. And don't worry. You won't miss your teachers. Lumiere teachers live in your heart forever. One last thing before I go and you graduate. We're from different generations and many of us from different countries. I just want to make sure we can agree on one point. Lumiere, number one. Lumiere, number one. Lumiere, number one. Thank you.